Howdy, newcomers. I knew you'd get a giggle out of that one.
Oh, fantastic. I was waiting for something, but I had no idea what, and that was so joyful.
I told you I'm going to do a new intro every time. Switch it up, keep the flavors fresh for all our funky fresh listeners. So howdy, everyone. We are back, episode 5 for Heartfire, the podcast on the interwebs.
Love it.
I'm excited to be here. How you feeling, Carly?
I'm so happy. Yeah, I'm overjoyed by your introduction there, and I think things just in general are feeling really nice. So I'm excited to be here too, and I am excited for us to be here and flow together.
I love that. Yeah, it's actually been a busy couple weeks.
Mhm.
So I think we talked about last class. I decided to officially start my own Reiki practice. Like the day after I decided that, I found the perfect place to do it. I agreed upon the lease. I've been really setting up the space for the last week. And that's been really exciting. I think it looks really cool. I'm excited to get people in there. I've been working on setting up the website and marketing. So all the kind of groundwork, which I enjoyed. I felt nervous about it at times, but it's been exciting kind of allowing myself this new path, this new avenue of how to be in the world, how to be in service, how to be an expression. And so that's been exciting for me.
I love that.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that there are some fears that have come up around kind of setting this stuff up? I know I'm like just kind of diving in here, but this has been a topic that's been coming up so much over the last couple of weeks. So I thought I'd ask if you don't mind.
No, absolutely. There have been it's been interesting because for me, my spiritual aspect of self or practice has always been more of a personal thing. And for, I feel like, a few reasons, it's always been something that has been for me, and I haven't really shared unless people have directly asked or in a setting where I hear the bone chewing. It's kind of relaxing though.
Sorry.
No, for everyone
I straight up took it into the other room. Yeah, he likes to hang out in here.
We took it in the other room because you could hear it, but he loves it. I'm down for it though. It is honestly a little relaxing, just like it's like white noise in the background.
Yeah, it relaxes him too.
Good. So stepping into this new role where I am very public about it, and in fact, like marketing myself in this new way, it has been a different experience for me. And I think there have been some residual fears. And we actually did a session. I did a Reiki session with you, which was awesome, or a healing session. And we got into a bit of some of those fears I believe to be from this life, and some of those fears I believe to be from previous lives where I might have done similar work, or I might have been a part of spiritual practices that were, frowned upon, to say it lightly. More likely,
that's a very delicate way to say it.
They came after people with pitchforks and knives, that sort of thing. So there have been some fears that have come up, and it's been interesting to kind of explore them and ask myself why they're there, ask myself if they're needed anymore, and see what kind of unfolds.
Yeah. I think it's a lot of fun. We're both maybe in a little bit different ways, but we're both kind of on a similar journey right now where we're, because we just moved and I'm getting out and meeting people and, figuring out the community and expanding to the frequency of the area and all those things. And you're doing the same thing in a, I don't know, in actually a very similar manner, and I have found that a lot of old fears have come up, and they started the week before we moved. And I do this weekly meditation group with my teacher and some other women, and I'm like the youngest one in the group by like, I don't know, easily like 30 years. So like all my friends are like in their 50s and 60s and 70s. It's great to have all these wise women, who I
Mm,
can talk to. So I have one friend, we stay after because we do it on Zoom because I'm far away now. So we stay after and we chat every week. And she's been on vacation, and so we were catching up, and it was so fascinating to talk about the fears that had been coming up since we moved. And it's all these old fears of, what if I'm not good enough? What if I'm making this up? What if I don't actually know what I'm doing? What if there's no space for me here? Which I
mm,
feel like all those are pretty telling, some really kind of old stuff that had been coming up. But I don't know. I guess the reason why I'm putting these out here is because, number one, I feel like there's power in acknowledging these fears. I feel like that when we can kind of bring them up and look at them, we can remove the emotion, we can remove the fear from it, and use it as a moment of transformation, right? Use it as a learn to re-know those fears that we've been carrying. And I think it's also reassuring to know that we're not the only one who experiences fears. I think we all do. Like, I mean, I think that there's either love or there's fear. There's nothing in between. And most of this world is based in fear. So this is like
yeah.
everybody kind of deals with this stuff. And even within, like our healing community, because all of the women that I'm meditating with, they're all healers of some sort. And, even within that community, there are so many people who are still facing these fears. And a lot like you, I think a lot of times it's from the history, from the traumas that we've carried from lifetime to lifetime. Um, so thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, no, you as well. And I think you put it very succinctly. A lot of the things that just naturally kind of come up. I think also in general, when you start any new like life project, right? We unfortunately all kind of inherently internalize this sense of lack of worth. And I think it is
Hmm.
encouraged by our societal structures, unfortunately, in a lot of ways. And especially in something like a spiritual practice where there isn't a clear there isn't a basis set up in as in the traditional world of this is accounting and you do accounting right when the numbers are correct, whereas like, oh yeah, that's easy and everyone knows what accounting is and agrees that's what accounting is. Whereas the spiritual work, it's like, okay, a lot of people don't even agree that this exists, which I also get,
Yeah.
and we can get into that. But
Hmm.
then be like, people will then also disagree as to what's helpful, what isn't, what they can feel, what they can't. And then third of, there's no like clear cut results. You get at the end with like a sheet that says like, you scored 100 on today's Reiki session,
Yeah.
like and so
Good job. We
it's
cleared some old crap.
exactly. And so it's moving into a different sort of self as well, one where you have to move into faith with your practice,
Hmm.
faith that what you're feeling and what you're experiencing is real, what the other person feels and experiences is real. And I think we do live in a society where it's not that we negate others' experience, but we can often readily write off others' experience, where it's like,
Yeah.
if you want to, you can negate any experience I've ever had, or like, spiritual
Yeah.
or other, and that's a tough place to be in. And I do believe in this work, and I believe in what I have been able to do and what I've seen happen because of experience, an experience that
Hmm.
is undeniable, that has been extremely physical, that has been extremely emotional, extremely mental, like extremely spiritual, obviously, but each spiritual experiences that encompass all of those things. And when you have that experience personally, you know it to be true. And yet it's funny because
Hmm.
we all have those experiences in our life in one way or another. It doesn't have to be spiritual. And yet often we don't trust other people when they say, no, this is my experience, and like, this is what occurred. And so it's an interesting kind of way to be in and to navigate. And I think you just really do have to trust your experience and rest in that, and rest in the faith of what you have been a part of, what you have done, and allow others to step into that faith with you, and trust their own
Mhm.
experience.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's beautiful. And I feel like the conclusion that I finally came to around all those fears is that it was a much appreciated opportunity to kind of transmute some of that energy. And you know now, as you're talking, it reminds me of like, oh, I think it's been really useful that I had been skeptical, or I had been, because I was like, I don't think I jumped into any of this blindly. I certainly, for several years, brought a lot of my logical, analytical mind into it. And it was only kind of once I started learning more about like quantum physics
Mm.
that I really embraced. And that's so
Some
funny that
light
it was
beach
through,
reading.
yeah, you know, yeah, well, but it was through learning a little bit more about that I really started to appreciate the metaphysical. And I think that it created, like, having an understanding of quantum physics. Well, let's be very honest here, it's very elementary understanding, okay? I'm certainly no rocket scientist, but I do find it to be fascinating. And with all of my years of studying mysticism, I love to see the parallels. And I think that's really kind of what actually like led me down this path. Was it gave, what it was, it gave me permission to say, oh,
Mm.
okay, I can engage in this. And so what I think has been happening is, I think over the years, as I've been surrendering, because I've been practicing this surrender, and to me, surrender create space for faith, right? I can let go of
Ooh,
the
I
idea
love
that I have
that.
to control it. That helps me expand my faith. And that's the space that we have to hold when we're working. And I think that the practice, having practice for being practicing the surrender, it's a lot of practicing. But I do think that now what's coming up is all of those little things that used to be useful to help me get to this point, that now it's kind of like, oh, now we have to let those things go so that we can get to the next point. Because I feel like there is certainly a next point. I don't know what it is, but I feel it coming.
No, I 100% agree. And that's why I give people such grace. I try to, at least when they don't understand something, or they don't believe in something, or they're like, oh, that's nonsense. Because I was the
Hmm.
same way, for so long. And I I really was, and it took
Yeah.
the
Reformed skeptics.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's still healthy to have some of that,
Yeah.
not just hopping on board with everything every spiritual person, so-called spiritual person says, because there is, I think, unfortunately, like anything else, some bullshit out there.
Yes,
But
I do too.
I find it useful and important that I did have the skepticism where I probably had too much for sure, but there was a healthy amount where it led me to the right people and the right teachings, because I
Yeah.
wasn't like, okay, this sounds light and fluffy and great, and I'm just going to hop on board with it
Ooh.
because of that.
Yeah.
It's like,
Mhm.
no, I need the teachings that really change me, that really change my life. And I'm open to whatever that is, and anything else I'm just not going to deal with. And so
Sorry.
it's funny, like, no worries. When I was originally like very Buddhist and very much into just like meditation and mindfulness and the practicality of that. And then, I started listening to more podcasts, like Duncan Trussell podcast, and oh, coffee run. You're a savior.
Coffee delivery. All right, now
That was
everybody
very
go.
nice.
Okay,
Busy day,
so
the Carly house.
oh, look, and there's like a chocolate covered espresso bean on it too. So coffee and a
Oh,
snack.
dang. I'm
Okay.
honestly jelly right now. Being a skeptic, I think definitely has helped me in the sense that it's always made me want to find, again, the teachings and
Mhm.
people that really do change and affect my life in experiential ways, because I have read some of the spiritual books where it's like, oh shit, the aliens came and did this, and the Atlanteans did that, and then this happened and that happened, and like, while that's all really cool and fascinating stuff, and I get why you would love that,
Yeah.
that I found a lot of that didn't help me. Like, it didn't
Right.
help my life. It's like after reading that, it's not like, oh, I know now how to be better in the world, or like reading a book that's all like, don't give a fuck about what people think, or don't do this or
Yeah.
love this and like be this. And it's like, I get there are useful aspects of something like that, and I'm not, trying to degrade that work in any way or anything. It's more of, for me, having that skepticism of what I've been reading or learning or ingesting has always led me to, okay, all that matters is the teachings that really affect me and how I am in the world and how I can be with others, and everything else just kind of is the chaff that's cut away. And that to me has been
Mhm.
really valuable because it's led me to some of the best teachers and the best people in my life,
Yeah.
thankfully.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think the skepticism also kind of, as we soften around it and as we kind of lift around it, I think it lends way to discernment, which, I think is important, navigating a world where there are so many people who claim to have the truth, especially when people claim to have the only truth. Like, I do think that the skepticism, as we, because I don't know, the way that I'm kind of seeing this is skepticism is floating right around here at this level, and then as you lift it, it lifts to become discernment, which
Mm.
is maybe skepticism without the emotion or without the negative kind of, I don't know, you know, you follow what I'm
No, absolutely. I think that's a really excellent way to put it. And I like that idea of lifting it to the beneficial, right? I
Yeah.
just listened to a really interesting podcast, uh, Aubrey Marcus's podcast about IFS, internal family systems. And it's all
Hmm.
about talking to the parts of ourselves that
Hmm.
were useful and are useful, but have taken on extreme roles because of trauma. And
Gotcha.
so, like, something like skepticism could be that, where because of some trauma that occurred, or some negative experience, this healthy discernment that we all have and need, right? Of, okay, is this thing what it says it is? Is this thing helpful
Hmm.
or not? Can turn to really unhealthy skepticism or paranoia,
Yeah.
because it feels like it needs to step up and protect you from something that, you know, had occurred and it believes will occur again. And so it's all
Hmm.
about like talking directly to these parts of ourselves, addressing it as just that, like, you are a part of me, you are not me. Like, this unhealthy
Hmm.
skepticism, to use that example,
Yeah.
this is a part of me, and really asking what it wants, seeing when it came about, what experiences caused it, seeing if you can lift those experiences, like go back in your mind to that experience and be with it, and say like,
Yeah.
okay, part, like, what if it's different than we thought? What if, this person wasn't
Hmm.
really trying to kill me or wasn't out to really get me, they were just in their own shit? And what if now, like, as a
Yeah.
grown up, I know the difference and I don't need you to be in this extreme role anymore. And you can step back and lift to that healthy discernment. And I found it a
Hmm.
really powerful practice in that way of being able to address parts, ask about their roots, and then lift them at the point of, you know,
Yeah.
uh, they're
The origin
stepping up.
point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And so I found it
Yeah.
a super interesting podcast and a helpful practice. And I think it relates very much to this. We all have these natural, like, good aspects of ourselves, aspects made in love, that
Hmm.
love us and want to protect us. And therefore, because of things that happened, especially when we're kids and we have limited life experience to kind of differentiate, it steps up to these extreme roles in which, okay, now I have trust issues, or now I have this, or I it's inhibiting me from, lifting in more ways. And
Mhm.
so it is important, I think, to understand that there is love behind these things, but uh, really interrogating the aspect of as it is now and letting go the fear around it.
Yeah. And it's interesting too because I can see all kinds of examples of things that were created in distortion as a way to protect myself. When you live in constant trauma for the first nearly 30 years of your life, like you pick up some shit,
Yeah.
And now I'm, looking back on all those things, I definitely have an appreciation for those things because I think that it helps me be more compassionate out in the world, and I think that it creates space to be able to effectively do this work. Although I don't think that it's necessary to be able to do this work. I had this really fascinating kind of thought the other day. I've been doing the artist's way, which, have you ever heard of that? It's from like probably before you were born. Like, I know they had like their 30-year anniversary book like a few years ago, but it's The Artist's
Yep.
Way. And the book is by Julia Cameron. It's been, again, around for a while. And it was funny because I was having a conversation with my bestie in California. And she was like, "Oh, you should check out this book. It's really fantastic." And then she's like, "I started it." And then I found out that my sister had started it too because she went to recommend it. And so as I'm unpacking books in the house, I actually find there's like a companion guide, the actual like workbook to go along with it, that
Oh,
apparently
interesting.
Vince picked up for me at a thrift store, like, I don't know, 5 years ago. And I didn't even know we had it until I was unpacking books. And I was like, "Oh, that's really funny. Maybe I'll like take this down and have a look." So anyway, one of the things that is part of the artist's way is morning pages. And I know you and I have talked before about, why we both feel journaling is so important. But so she's like, 3 pages a day. Look at the size of these pages. They're like massive, right?
Oh boy.
But, the beauty of writing that many pages every day is that you really kind of start to get in there. So I was writing one day and I had this realization because, I still have some things that I carry in my body, some physical pain as a result of some energetic things that I haven't let go of. And one of the things that I realized I was holding on to was the need to have had trauma to be effective in the work that I do.
Mm.
But I realized, oh, you know what? I actually don't need that. I actually get to do this work just because here I am. I am also, as you and she and they and he are, divinity and form. And so that it all by itself gives us permission as we hold these high level frequencies to do this work. So it's no longer necessary to identify with the trauma. And I forgot why I was telling you this.
The Artist's Way book?
Oh yeah, I don't know, but I think that's what I wanted to get to. The Artist Way is
Yeah.
fantastic. I'm really enjoying it. We can talk about that, but I think it was more of a, oh, okay, that's what it was, a realization that, oh, I don't like, just because I had these experiences in my life does not mean I have to continue to carry them for the rest of my life. So, and when I choose to continue to carry them for the rest of my life, that's the equivalent of making my decisions based on history, which, we're working to not do anymore. We're working to re-know all of these things. So I felt like that was really powerful. And I guess I just wanted to share
No, that's beautiful.
that.
And I think a lot of us come into spiritual practice because we have had these really powerful, painful experiences, these traumatic
Yeah.
experiences, whatever, however you want to phrase them. And it they're wonderful in that they can start us on the path and realize, okay, like I can't be like this anymore, or like this level of pain, whatever's causing it's not okay, and start to
Yeah.
realize our ways. But there is a point where you do have to realize, and I was just actually having this conversation with my cousin, his girlfriend, that it's you're allowed to learn in easier ways. You're
Yes.
allowed to learn subtly. You're allowed to learn beautifully. You're allowed to learn in joy. And you don't have to always bring the hard experiences to you, the 2x4, learning to you.
Yes.
You don't have
Yep.
to get beat up by the teaching anymore.
Yeah.
You can move into a state where the lessons you need about how to grow are
Mhm.
easy and beautiful, and that doesn't mean they're always graceful or easy in the sense that it's not, like, fuck, I'm still like this, or like, oh, this is
Like, "Oh, I'm
gross, or I
learning."
feel this, or uncomfortable or whatever. But it's
Mhm.
easy in the sense that you're saying, okay, I know this is something that has come up. I actually want to talk about a teaching. I was listening to um a book channeled by Yeshua, or
Mhm.
channeling Yeshua, and he talks about moving mountains, which has always been a really intriguing teaching to me, and one that, you know, I was always like, what the fuck? Like, move mountains? Like, in Jesus' teaching, like, what the fuck does that mean?
How would you
Like,
do that?
yeah, like, what are you gonna pick it up? But it's
Slide it
reoccurring,
over.
yeah. What am I gonna do with it? Where am I gonna move it?
Just,
Well, mountain.
push it really
It's like, how's that even useful? And
hard.
but this is a teaching that comes up often. Like, the guides have used that phrase, like, move mountains, and I was like, oh, that's so weird that they're using it. Like, I thought that was just like a weird metaphor that got translated, lost in translation. And then
Yeah.
I learned the story of Hanuman and the Ramayana, and he moves mountains. Like, he literally picks up a mountain and brings it to Ram. And so it's just been a reoccurring teaching. And every time I find that there is a reoccurring teaching in religion and spirituality, that there is some weight behind it. And
Yeah.
and in this channeling, Yeshua talks about that, and he says that basically, like, we see these things in our lives as mountains, these, whether it be personal obstacles, whether it be what we think are outside external obstacles, and we create these mountains and we don't look at them, and we allow them to pile up and grow until the point where to climb them is ridiculously hard. It's like climbing
Mhm.
Everest. And when in fact we can actually dissolve them, like, we can look at them with mindfulness, with love, and move them, and get to the point where we're, like, we use liquid consciousness. He uses the phrase, which I thought was so interesting.
Liquid
when you move
consciousness.
when you move into the present moment, you move into liquid consciousness, in which there is no solidity to these mountains. There's no
Mm.
solidity to these problems, to these obstacles. And in fact, you can re-know them and move them in that way. And so it moves from this giant, stubborn rock to, a mound of sand that can be blown away. And you can even address them in that state of mindfulness, that liquid consciousness, like, before they become mountains in these little hills, and realize, like, they're the best and most holy ways for us to learn. And when a mountain shows up, to be grateful and, like, oh yes, this is, something new for me to
Here's
learn,
an
something new
opportunity.
for me to, yeah, an opportunity.
Mhm.
Exactly, that's the exact word used. And so I love that illustration so much.
And that's really funny that that's the image, like, that was the image that I saw the mountain and I saw it shrinking down into the palm of your hand and disintegrating into dust and just going and blowing it off your hand, and there it goes. And then that's exactly what you said, and I'm like, "Oh, I love this."
It's so
How
funny.
fun.
I've talked to you about it before, but I haven't talked about it on the podcast yet. Basically because it's been so new, and I'm just been trying to figure out what it was. But I
Mhm.
I have been channeling the last 3 months, and I had a question around, basically, one of my mountains, really, like, my personal
Mhm.
mountains. And the answer was
Was it
like,
basketball?
no, no. That's not as much a mountain
Sorry, I had
anymore,
to.
thankfully, but
Good.
no, no. And I was asking about it, and I saw this image of a boulder, and, just touching the boulder, like, really looking at it and just touching it with mindfulness and love, and it
Mhm.
actually just disintegrates into sand. And it's almost like,
Yeah.
because I wasn't looking at it, I was assuming it was solid and it was this immovable boulder. And yet the second like I gave it that mindfulness and that touch, it disintegrated into sand. It wasn't what I thought it was. And like to me,
Mm-hmm.
it was one of those like fuck wow moments where it was like, oh, okay, this makes so much sense. And applying that practice
Mm-hmm.
has been a really powerful teaching. Like, what if these things that I think are stuck in myself, these things that I think are immovable karma, can in fact, just dissolve into sand?
Yeah. I love that. Um, that actually ties back to quantum physics, right? Look,
Mm,
bring it into a loop. There's I forget what it's called, something about like an observation effect or something. But basically, when you look at a particle, you change its very existence. And so, because I've been asking a lot of questions lately. So, I guess the reason why quantum physics is on my mind is because it's been coming up a lot lately in my
mm,
conversations with my writing and as I'm channeling and, whatever. And because I've been trying to figure out, like, how do I talk to people about the work that we're doing, Because it's not accurate for me to tell people that I do Reiki. Like, yes, that's part of what I'm doing, but it's not the entirety of what we're doing. And so, what actually ended up coming up is that it's intuitive quantum healing. And I
ooh,
think
that's a
that
fun
that's
phrase.
cool, right? Yeah.
So
And
cool.
right. And so, first, the personality
It's like
body
the
got a little scared. We
coolest.
had a little fear, right? Like the fear came up though, where it was like, oh, I don't know what that is. And that, I'm going to have to explain that. But I mean, and then I was actually, asking questions and kind of channeling during that's where the phrase came from. It wasn't me. And it was such a fascinating experience where it looks like we've been kind of like working backwards on this thing instead of like having an
Mm,
idea of like what it is. I've been doing it for several years, right? And the more connected I get and the more I get out of my way and the more I set aside the fears and the more I surrender into faith, the more the whatever this healing modality is transitions, the more it changes, the more it expands, the more fun ways we find to work with energy. Because we've talked about the heart fire. That's actually how we named the podcast. You named the podcast. And that's one of the tools that we use in this intuitive quantum healing. And that I don't know if this is like an actual thing like out there in the world that people are doing. Like I know people are doing like quantum touch and this, that, and the other. I don't know what any of that stuff is. I don't know if this is the same stuff, but I think anybody can do this as we bring our attention to the mountains, right? So I think the reason why I'm
mm,
telling you guys this is to reinforce the idea that all of us can shift this energy. Um, you know, yes, I love working with other healers. Like I find it very useful for my own stuff. Like I'm great at helping other people shift their energy. I do okay at shifting mine, but it's a whole lot more effective with somebody else. But I think that we can all really do this for ourselves. I think that we can at least get the process going. And so I guess I just want to encourage people to, if you do have mountains, see if you can shrink them down into your hand, let them turn to dust and blow away. And then if you can't, get some help. Get some help with somebody who can read the frequency and help you shift it. Yeah, interesting.
yeah, no, that
I
is
think I
super
went off course
interesting.
there though.
No, that's what we do on this podcast. I don't think there's any other way to do
We do
it.
whatever.
There's no on course.
There's no course.
No, I like
I
that
love it.
name and I like that as a descriptor for it. And I think we will find new ways to describe, new ways to understand what energy healing is,
Hmm.
because it is in a way, and it feels sacrilegious to say this, it is a scientific practice. It is a practice of
It
moving
is.
energy, which is
That's
like,
exactly what it is.
yeah, that's a scientific practice. And I think in the
Mhm.
future it will get studied more and all of that. But I think we're allowed to give ourselves permission to experience it in new ways, to study it in new ways, and to step into
Mhm.
the roles that come about when doing this practice, because we all are unique beings, right? We all have unique expressions and unique ways to be with others and to heal with others. And actually, I was channeling last night, and I had this, like, this is what came through, and it was revolutionary to me in a way in which I was the story of Hanuman got brought up, which I just talked about, in which there's a story in the Ramayana where he helps Ram with this really important task of saving Sita from a demon, and so Ram
Mhm.
takes his place back up as king, and Ram doesn't know he's God. He's just like us. He's come back to Earth, doesn't know he's God, but he's able to do all these miracles and fun stuff. But he says, Hanuman, come before me. I have a gift for you. You helped me out so well. Here's this golden bracelet, like ordained with jewels, literally like the most expensive thing you could think. Today it'd be that, Tiffany diamond studded all around, like truly
Right,
king
right.
shit. So he gives it to Hanuman, and Hanuman's this giant monkey god avatar, this really funny being, and he starts twiddling in his hands and turning it all around, and he starts like biting on it, and he starts like ripping it apart and pulling the jewels out and looking all over it. And Ram's like, what are you doing, monkey? Like, stop. Like, you're this priceless, this priceless bracelet, what are you doing to it? And he looks up and he says, like, where is your name on this? If your name is not on this, it means nothing to me. He's like, the
Mm.
name of Ram, the name of God is all I care about. And he takes his finger and he cuts his chest open, and he pulls open his chest, and along every bone, along every muscle, along his heart is just written Ram, 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 Ram. And
Mm.
it's such a beautiful story to me of like this being that is complete service, in which every single bone in his body is written Ram, written the name of God. And he's given this thing that is of the most worldly value, and it means nothing to him if it doesn't have the energy of God with it, the name of God, the vibration of God with it.
Mhm.
And so it was this idea of pure service, and Hanuman is like an avatar of pure service to Ram. And I thought I was then given the attunements by the guides of, I was asking about the Reiki practice, and
Mhm.
I saw myself like in the Reiki room. And when you give the client or whoever, any person, those attunements, I know who you are in truth. I know what you are in truth.
Mhm.
I know how you serve in truth. You are free. You are free. You are free. It was the realization that that is the service. You are seeing them as God and reminding them as God.
Mhm.
And that is to serve God, because you're both serving them in knowing them as God, saying to Ram, you're God, wake up. I'm here to serve you. And then
Mhm.
you are serving God by waking up another being, by allowing God to realize itself again. And you're serving yourself by being in that energy of service to God, of
Mhm.
knowing God in all things. And so, like, that was so beautiful and revolutionary to me of like, this is the work. This is what being in service
Yeah.
is to know
Yeah.
another in that space.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And, I think a lot about the healing practice too. And because it is a practice. And I have to say, I do agree that it's a science, but I also feel like it's an art. And that's where the intuition comes in, because I think the intuition is really important for helping us read the energy, for helping us know what to do with it. And I think that that comes with
Absolutely.
connection. But I think overall, the only thing that healing really is recognizing the divinity in places where it's been denied. That's it. It's such a
Mm.
simple, like, when you really break it down, it's such a simple act. And yeah, I started working with a new client. I've actually been working with a bunch of new clients lately. It's been really fun because I noticed a few weeks ago, I was like, oh, I think it's time to start welcoming in some new clients. And I didn't like do anything. I just said, I think it's time to start welcoming in some new clients. And then I relaxed, and now all these new clients are coming in. I'm like, oh, how fun. I love this for all of us. Um, But, as I started working with a new client, I told her, I was like, look, it's my goal to work myself out of a job, right? Like it's my goal to help you realize yourself so fully that you no longer need me. And, it's a terrible business model, but I think it's a great way to work. Because,
Well, lucky for us,
they're
Carly, there
always
are more than one people who need it. Even if we
exactly,
get one fully
exactly.
healed, there will be another. But yeah, I getcha.
Yeah. Well, and as you, I think, hold the intention to help people, empower people to be able to flow that energy in the most life enhancing way for themselves. I think that is it. It always comes back. Like I think it would be leaning on fear to try and keep somebody as a client, right? And I think that's, I don't know, kind of our underlying current here today is, hey, we notice these fears that are coming up and we are not abiding. No, thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Should we pull a
Should we
card?
pull a card? Yeah.
Should we do what this podcast is about?
What is this podcast actually about?
I couldn't tell you. It's funny. If someone asked me, like, describe this podcast, I'd be like, oh, we talk. I was trying to write a description for this podcast, and I was like, we talk about our lives and spirituality, I think, sometimes together.
No, yeah. You know what we're actually doing? We are embodying the highest frequency we can, and we're sending it out into the world. And
I hope so.
that's what
I
we're
like
doing.
that.
Well, that's kind of so we do, for those of you who don't see behind the scenes, which is none of you guys,
Ooh.
we always do, before we get started, we set an intention. I love we set an intention. We call in our team of helpers and we do some attunements. So we practice bringing in the highest frequency we can hold. And I actually went to a group earlier that, like, right before we started recording this, that we were doing attunements and stuff. And I think that's why those of you on the, listening end also did not see all the technical challenges we had today. And I think I was like frying the technology. I got a little too over energized here, like frying everything. But I think that's the whole point, right? Like we're not frying the technology. We do
Try the
not want to do that. Let me be
technology.
clear.
Down with technology.
No, we appreciate the technology. We are trying to work in harmony with it. But is really
Please,
just
I have to do a lot of editing.
Oh, sorry, this one's a mess. But anyway, it's really about embodying the highest frequency we can and putting that out in whatever way we can. And so I don't think it matters what we talk about as long as we're holding a nice frequency, which I feel like we are. Okay. All right. So I will pick first. I don't have a specific question. Do you have a specific question today?
Specific in that it's a question. General question, but it is a question.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with like what is best for me to learn and know stepping forward.
Okay.
Not a question.
All
You don't
right.
have to. You can copy if you want, but you don't have
Actually, you know what I was thinking? Maybe I'll pull for you and you pull for me.
to. Ooh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I like
Okay.
that. That feels
So,
good.
what do you need to know? Let's find out.
Yeah, stepping forward.
Okay. You know what's interesting? First things first. As you asked your question and I held the space of it, the heart fire just like ignited and just kind of started shooting out at you. So that's there
Ooh,
for
I'll
you.
take it.
Yeah, if you like.
Thank you. Lovely.
And
I will take it.
we love a little heart fire. So I really love this card for you. This is the Grail Knight. And the keywords here are romance, illusion, and seeking the sacred. And
Ooh.
my read on this card has changed over the years. Um, specifically when it comes to seeking the sacred, because I had this realization, I think it was after one of the Costa Rica retreats, but I had this realization that we don't have to seek the sacred because everything already is. And that, man, that just blew my mind. So,
Yeah.
um, okay. Romance and the seeking of that which is sacred, such are the missions of the Grail Knight. He represents the coming together of all elements to form perfect life through a union of heaven and earth. Or he signifies a romantic union of lover with lover. I feel like this is the former in your case. I feel like this is really kind of about the frequency that you are embodying as you move forward, right? Because you already have everything that you need. Like you already know what you need to know, you already have the skills you need to have, and it's a matter of holding the space of seeing all as sacred. Okay. In the beginning of all relationships, there's a time when everything is perfect. One seeks out the discovery of love in the treasures of the other, all while holding up a mirror in which beauty and perfection are reflected. There is both truth and illusion. When the Grail Knight appears, he lets you know that your own beauty, perfection, and innermost desires may be reflected in the mirror that is held up by the love of another. Indeed, love is in the air. Perhaps it's also time for you to fall in love with yourself. If you don't, you run the risk of attracting the same affirmation from the outside world. Love attracts love. Be love, and you shall find love. A gentle warning: light cannot exist without shadow, so don't be fooled by the illusion of perfection. Be willing to see the shadow and ask for honesty. Then you can never be disappointed. This is a fortunate omen.
I love that card. You know, one of those aspects that really stepped out to me was the loving of self, and it's
Mhm.
become said so much that it uh, almost feels empty in a way, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
it feel I really like that now because I feel like where I'm at, it feels like the right place I need to step into. And when I was and channeling the other night, and I asked about kind of lineage, and I'm always curious of like, I always felt like, oh, do I have to I found so many avatars of God that I've really been drawn to, and felt
Hmm.
incredible energy from. And it's always been weird to me, like, oh, can I like Krishna and Christ, like,
Is this okay?
is it conflicting, like, yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
so when I was asking about that, and kind of asking about past lives of, was I a part of a certain lineage in past lives, was I this, did I work with that person, whatever, and I got like, you are of the lineage of love. And like,
Mm.
to me, that was so beautiful. Like, that is the lineage I feel a part
Hmm.
of, right? And like, that
Yeah.
can be so many different avatars, so many different spiritual works, so many different teachings, so many different religions. And so to me, I know to embody that lineage, I do have to step forward and love myself fully, even the human parts,
Hmm.
all of the parts, the divine, and the aspects of me that are animal, the that are human, because that is a part of this embodiment that I have chosen, that we all have chosen. And so that's really interesting to me. I love the card. Thank you for the poll, Carly.
Yeah, you're welcome. Um, yeah, I really do love this for really, I know I pulled it for you, but I love it for everyone, because I do think it's a lot about embodying the love. It was interesting when you were talking about, when people are talking about love yourself, how it's like overdone. I feel like it got like washed out, and it definitely became like washed too hard on the spin cycle. But but I do think that the embodiment of that frequency is like the goal, right? Like it's what we're trying
Yeah.
to do. Or at least that's what I'm trying to do. And I notice when I'm not doing it and I'm like, oops, well, time to get back in. So yeah,
Yeah.
love this. Thanks for your
And it's like,
question.
you have to know the divinity in yourself to know it in others. You have to know the
Yep.
love in yourself fully to know it in others, because if you still have that, speck in your heart or whatever, it is gonna stop you in whatever way from that fully embodiment. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And, like I work with a lot of, especially women who are like, it's so much easier for me to see it in other people and not in myself. And I can appreciate that because I feel like I spent a lot of time in that place as well, because there are lots of things I think, especially as women, that we're told we're too skinny, too fat, too short, too tall, too this, too that, too whatever. It's like everybody's got
Yeah.
a hand in the pie of what we're supposed to be. But
Mm.
you know, for me, it became one of those things where I think I decided initially to love myself despite all those things, because I certainly don't line up with what society says women should be. Like, I'm a super tomboy. Like, I'm not into girl things mostly. But for me, I started loving myself as an act of service because I realized that we are all connected. And if I was going to fully love other people, like I've always wanted to be of service, and if I am going to actually be of service, I do have to love every bit of myself, the warts and all. Or for some reason, I was thinking the toenail fungus and all. Like, not that any of us has toenail fungus,
I
but
like
if you
that. I
did,
like
we
that
would want to
better.
love that, right?
Yeah. I think we find it harder because we know
So
ourselves fully, you know. It's like, "Oh, I know
yeah, and
all
they're
the bad
like, you
shit
don't
that
deserve
I've done.
that.
I know all the mistakes."
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly, and we're
yeah.
so hard
I
on
know all the times you've
ourselves.
been an asshole.
Yeah. Me? What? Never. No, not me.
Not you, me. I
But
meant me.
yeah, yeah, you're an asshole. You're an asshole.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But if I'm an asshole, you're an asshole, and if you're an asshole, I'm an asshole. So see,
Exactly.
because
Exactly.
we're the
No, that's
same.
the fun of it.
Yeah.
All right, let me
All
pull for
right.
you now. Now that
Yeah.
we know we're
Same
both
question.
assholes. Same question?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm still giggling about us all of us being assholes.
Oh, this is hilarious. This is so funny. I've never seen this card before. Capacity to love. That's the
Huh.
theme of the day right now.
Yeah, it is.
Capacity
Interesting.
to love. This is a pretty card too.
Yeah.
Okay, 34. So this is for you. It takes courage to open up and heal. I don't know why I said that so weird. And heal areas of deep vulnerability.
Mhm.
Each human individual is created with a profound longing to feel loved. Out of this need for love, you may exaggerate and parade your fascinating qualities while masking your weakness or fears. If you are not committed to looking at your root issues, you will feel disconnected from your true self. Take a moment to look at how you are handling yourself. Are you being open and honest? Are you withdrawing from a situation? Are you masking a problem with some sort of avoidance tactic, such as shopping, drinking, or excessive eating? Are you holding grudges? When your heart is open, you will find that your actions tend to match your words. You rarely get offended. You are emotionally available. When your heart is open, you truly take responsibility for who you are and what your beliefs are. You love yourself more completely. Conflict resolves more easily, and you have a deep desire to live in harmony with others. Ganesh's trunk represents the ability to consider how you are perceiving the situation, which is significant in your spiritual growth. An elephant's trunk is an important appendage that is used in its day to day functioning. It serves to remove trees and other it serves to remove trees and other large obstacles, as well as for more fiddly tasks such as breaking open fruits to eat. An elephant has the capability to handle a range of tasks, from minute ones to those requiring great strength. In this way, Ganesh's trunk is an emblem of his great intelligence and his extraordinary capacity for love. Rely on your own vast array of abilities to tackle your problems and to know that Ganesh is supporting you in this process.
Nice. Thank you. I really feel like this is a confirmation. right? Like, because I'm pretty sure we've been hitting on all these things, right? Like,
Yeah. Like we've
these are
talked
the
about
fears.
we've talked about mountains and obstacles, we've talked about the fears. Yeah.
Yeah. And I do really, not that I need confirmation of how I'm moving through the world because it feels right, you know? Um, but it is, I don't know, the personality body's like, "Ooh, yay, confirmation." Like, you know, like, yeah, I've been diving in deep. I've been asking for these things to come up. I've been, working on shrinking the mountains, turning them to dust and blowing them away. So I really love that. And the heart fire ignites again. So I'm just going to send it out there. So if anybody would enjoy some of this heart fire energy, which if this is your first episode, it's this, I thought it was heartburn when it first started, but it's not. It's just this frequency that comes through. And as I was doing some writing last night, and I realized that the heart fire is kind of like a general purpose kind of energetic frequency.
Mm.
So it clears energy when it needs to, and it brings in energy when it needs to. And it's cool because I've been seeing this. I don't know when it started, but there's like a frequency that comes out of one hand and a different frequency that comes out of the other hand, and then the heart fire comes in with it, and then it intermingles into this double helix structure with the heart fire running through the middle. So it just does like all kinds of stuff. So
Mm.
it's going. If you would enjoy some, please have some now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll take
And
it.
you
No,
may feel
I
it.
like
You may
that.
not. Mhm. Yeah.
Mhm.
Love it.
Yeah, no, it does feel like good confirmation of everything we've been talking about. And I remember during our session, there is a moment where like at the end you like channeled through something and like a message for me, and you're like, that doesn't sound like my people, like it sounds like one of yours, and you're like, and then it ends with, but he could have channeled this all himself. And like, to me that was like a hilarious moment of like, you
That's
know
funny.
like, it's funny getting the poke of, but an appreciation of the confirmation of someone else. It's always nice to have the confirmations from the universe and the synchronicities of like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's not just me being crazy. And I've heard the principle of three, of like three confirmations: one from you, one from another person, one from experience, or
Hmm.
external or whatever. But it is nice to have those confirmations and to know you're in synchronicity. And yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I did think that was a hilarious moment.
I'd forgotten that. I don't remember anything that I channel, like, and when I'm doing
I
sessions with
barely do
people,
either.
yeah, I have no idea what happened in anybody's session ever. So some people record their stuff. Like, can I record? Absolutely, especially if there's something, useful for later. But I do try, and I've been getting better about like taking notes on impressions because it's been really fascinating. A lot of the information of what we're doing has been being revealed during sessions with people. And then of course, because I'm channeling it, I have no idea like what we talked about. But they'll like remind me at the end of the session, oh, this was kind of cool. Oh, let me jot that down so we, have that for later. Um, but I don't know why I feel like this is important. This has come up like in my head like three times. This loops us all the way back to the beginning of our conversation when we were talking about fears and skepticism. And lifting that skepticism to the place of discernment. And I think as we continue to expand and evolve in our energetic practices, I think that we start to shift where we get that knowing from, right? Or the spot from which we choose like who we're going to follow and what teachings and what books and whatever we're going to do. Because I think as we lift in frequency, we're able to more easily spot things that hold the frequency of truth. And so, where I used to choose things from a logical and analytical place, now I choose them based on how I feel the frequency. So, I'm not sure why that keeps coming up, but since it does, there you go.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that's the right way to be with anything, right? Like, you can have the confirmation, but if you don't know how to channel it, then it's not going to be effective. if it resonates with you, if you hear something and I've heard it described as hearing truth is like hearing something you already knew but forgot or didn't know
Mm-hmm.
and like
Yeah.
that's the resonance, that's the resonant tone. And as we do lift, we allow ourselves to understand there is more possibility, and we have
Mm-hmm.
experiences that open up our understanding of what things are, and more is allowed to come in, and we're able to move higher into that resonance and understand teachings that are more subtle in different ways, or are of a higher vibration, or don't logically make sense in the under the traditional standards of how the world is and what things are, but do make sense when you see through the tinted lens that we all have of fear or past agreement
Mm-hmm.
or history.
Yeah, I love that. And I also love and appreciate the fact that we're getting clearer and clearer, and we are bringing in more discernment from a high place, from this really lovely energetic space. So, hmm, such good stuff.
All right, any closing remarks here? Anything you
Um,
want to say?
yeah, sure.
Do it.
So,
Do it.
here's the thing. If you love this, if this resonates with you, then I think it would be a lovely idea if you shared it with your friends, with your family, if you followed it, if you liked it. I don't know where you guys are watching from. If you subscribe, all the things. I should probably leave this part to you because you're the generation who knows how to have the like technology. You know how to save things off of Google.
I mean, you're getting it all right. You're saying all the right
You're like,
things.
nailed it. I haven't set up the Instagram yet because man, time flies, but we're gonna have one of those soon. So we'll let you know when we do. And if you do find that you're drawn to receiving some energy work from either Tom or myself or someone else, I always encourage you to go with somebody who you feel like, and here it goes back to where we tied this all up here, you feel like is in energetic harmony with you, you feel like you can trust, and you feel like is a safe person to be with. I think that's super important, and I think always trust your judgment, listen to the discernment, and it's okay to go into it with a bit of skepticism as long as you believe that you can heal whatever the energy is. So with that, if that's something that you're drawn to, reach out to either Tom or myself. We're happy to help you out with that. And I think that's all I have to say.
I love it. I love it. That was perfect. I can't follow that up. So, Carly, it's been fun. Thank you for joining me. Thank you, all listeners out there. We are always incredibly blessed to have your presence. If you want to tune back in a week or so, we'll be here. So, yeah.
Love it. Thanks, Tom. Fun as always.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah. Bye.
Bye.